all. So first thing first, I'm French, so I'm going to need you to excuse me if something I say is not clear or if you don't understand something I said, don't hesitate to interrupt me and have me repeat. I don't mind. So that being said, I'm Ellian. I'm a French pixel artist. You might know me from my work on Rivals of Ether, which is a Smash Brothers clone. I do character animation, but also background, UI, and pretty much everything because for a long time we've been the only artist on the game. I also do a lot of game jams. You might eventually know Good Impression, which was probably my best game so far, but I've done like over 20 games in the last few years. And before becoming a freelance pixel artist, I was a level designer at Cyanide Studio in Paris. And the main game I worked on was Styx Master of Shadow, which was a stealth game featuring Goblin. So why should you listen to me? I'm an artist, but I also have background as a coder because I was in a school for computer science. And as I said, I was a level designer before. So I've been able to experience pretty much all the sides for as far as working with artists go, including being the not listening to the artist and not taking care of what they wanted to do. This talk is going to be based mostly on experience, but just not mine. I also contacted a few friends of mine who shared the story with me. Everything I'm going to say is anonymous, but it's all based on various artists. So I'm hoping I'm covering as much ground as I can. And this talk is mostly based on common sense as well, so I'm hoping that is going to help. So why should you not listen to me? So I'm French, I'm white, I'm male, I'm 30 and something, I'm this, so I don't represent everyone, and I don't represent all kind of projects either. So what I would want from you in this talk is like take what feels relevant to you. Some stuff I'm going to say are not going to be relevant to everyone. Final disclaimer, this talk is not a rant. It's going to look like a rant. It's going to sound like a rant and probably taste like a rant because I think it's a rant. But in the end, what I want to do with this is share the point of view of artists when we work with people. And I'm hoping that even if it sounds like a rant, it's just going to let you understand us better. So I'm trying to target all kind of audience. This is mostly going to be about professional freelancing, but a lot of stuff I'm going to say are going to be, how do you say that? Is going to be relevant in any kind of professional work, but also on game jam, amateur work, or even unpaid gigs. And I'm going to use a lot of terms I and us when I talk about artists and you when I talk about non-artists, but that doesn't mean you are not artist or that you should be concerned about everything I said. So all that being said, I'm going to start with the first thing that happens when you work with artists, which is approaching artists, which usually comes through an email. Could be a DM on Twitter or anything, but most of the time you're going to send an email to offer someone you like a job. So this is an example of email, a fake example of email that I get that is totally based on actual real emails I got. So you might notice a few mistakes in there, including the title that doesn't let me know what you actually expect from me. I'm going to guess that your name is not Akemi because your email address is MikeBanana420. You've made a typo in my name, which is not very nice, and the next sentence doesn't make very much sense, and I think you want me to work on pixel art for you. And finally, you ask me if you're interested, exclamation mark, question mark, smiley. Well, I'm not because you haven't told me anything about you or the game. So an actual first email you should send to an artist should look something like this, which is much more chunky, I guess. So we are going to go through that in more detail. So first, you want a good title for your mail, indicating, if possible, without being too long, of course, what kind of relationship you want. If you want me to be a contractor for you, if it's a partnership, if you just ask a question, maybe, and what you're expecting of me, because like, do you want pixel art? Do you want animation? Do you want something else that maybe I do or not? Next, you should have a real email address. Like MikeBanana420 is obviously your email from when you were teen. It would be good to have a professional address. It gives a much better look on your stuff. And the first thing you should do is introduce yourself, because I want to know who you are, because I have no idea. Giving me some of your background helps me knowing you. Next, in the example email, you will see that the person went through my portfolio, which means he knows what I do. Believe it or not, I got emails from people asking me what I do. Like, I've got people going, hey, I want to hire you, but I have no idea what you do. So I'm going to guess these people went through referrals, like friends send them over to me, but you should still take some time to check what I do before contacting me. And in this example, they also give example of a work they've seen me do that they like. That sentence was very French. Which means that just giving me an example of the work I do that you like, it's going to help me understand what you expect from me. Like, I'm going to know, okay, if you like this piece of work I've done, that means you like these specific styles or this kind of animations and stuff like that. That's already going to tell me what I'm going to do for you. Next, you should introduce your project and show your work. So that's something a lot of people don't do. They just come to me and tell me, hey, I'm working on a game, do you want to work on it? I don't know anything about your game. You probably heard about elevator pitch, which is when you have a one or two liner to give to a business partner or publishers, and the main goal is to make the person you're talking to interested in your game. The thing is, you should do that with artists and other team member for your game you're trying to work with, because you want us to be interested in your game. I'm going to have possibly multiple job offers from different people, and you want me to be more interested in your game than yours. Similarly, it's not necessary to keep stuff a secret. There are still people to this day that think their ideas are unique and should not be stolen. But if you want to work with me, you should not have to keep stuff away from me. I'm not going to steal your ideas or try to make your game because your idea is great. If I want to make a game, don't worry, I have my own ideas. I'm not going to steal yours. So next, you should explain what my role in the project should be. Ideally, giving me examples of what's expected, what style of art you want, and as many details as you can get without making a 1,000-word email. Because this is going to help me get an idea of the scope of the game and how much work you're expecting from me. And afterward is going to help me give you an actual quote on how much you should pay me. Next, it's very nice when you explain what the project is, and by that I don't mean what the game is, but what the actual project from management side you're going with. So it's like, what's your roadmap? What are your deadlines? What's the scope of the game? Do you intend to release the game on multiple platforms? Do you intend to maintain the game after it's done? Because all that is going to let me know how much investment I'm going to have in the project and how well it fits like what I can give you at the moment. Because sometimes they're going, hey, do you want to work on a game without letting me know that's going to actually take 4 years of my life, and that's not necessarily something I want to invest myself into. Finally, eventually, you can bring up a budget. That's something we're going to see right after that. And despite the length of that email, you should try to keep it as short as possible because whether I'm interested or not, even reading an email and taking the time to answer is going to take some of my time, and obviously I don't want to waste it. One important thing when contacting an artist is the timing, and by that I mean I'm not always going to be available. As a matter of fact, like I have to say no to like 95% of the email I get because I'm just too busy doing other projects. But the thing is, I was saying, if you make me interested in your game, I'm going to try to maybe make room to work on your project if I'm interested. Or I'm going to say, okay, I'm not available right now, but I could be in 1 or 2 months if you let me the time to finish the work I'm doing right now. And maybe that could be a great period of time for us to start working lightly together just to see if things go well between us and see if it's worth getting into a better relationship. And next, we're going to talk about budget. Awkward pause. So, yeah, this is a subject of contention between some of my friends and I, about should you have or not a budget to offer. Some of my friends argue that you should not come to me with a fixed rate from the start because I want to have some room to negotiate with you. But giving me a general budget along with the scope I was talking and roadmap I was talking about earlier helped me give you an actual estimate based on how much work there is to do. And the thing is, if you have a general budget to offer, that helps me fixing my rate because personally, I'm very stressed when I'm announcing my rates to people, especially when it's a project I want to work in. Because if I'm really interested in your game, I want to give you an estimate that makes sure I'm actually not asking you too much and I'm going to work on your game because I want to. So giving me a budget helped me giving you a rate, even if it's not a rate or options that would allow us to work together. I hope that makes sense. Keep in mind too that the artist's role influence rates a lot, and by that I mean if you just hire me as a contractor and give me specific instruction about what I should be doing, like I want you to draw a rat for the game because that's like the first enemy you can think of. I'm not going to ask you the same prices as if I was actually choosing what kind of enemy the game would be in the game, because art direction is not only an actual job on top of being an artist, but it also means that a lot of the responsibilities as far as the success of the game goes would fall on my shoulders. And as such, I think that I should be paid more. I hope that makes sense for everyone. And finally, revenue share. That's something you can offer and should probably offer because the first thing people are going to see in your game is the art. They're not going to see your lines of code or any design you've done behind. The art is the first thing they're going to see. So again, this talk is not a rant, but it would be nice if you offered us some part of the benefits from the game. And one very important thing is always sort out the money issues before any work starts, because you don't want to be like knee-deep in 2 weeks or even months of work before realizing that the way we do all the business side of things is not working out. Because the artist is going to bail, and finding another artist that can match the existing style is going to be hell for you. Next, we also are going to take some time to talk about game jams. Obviously, a lot of the advice I just gave are not relevant for game jam because there's no money involved, or it's not long involvement either. So what should be important in game jam when you contact someone to make them with is figuring out what your personal goals and my personal goals are. So in my example, my goal when I'm doing game jam is usually to try to learn something new that I don't know about. And so I'm not going to have an example of what you should contact an artist with when you want to work on a game jam, but talking about what you want to do with a jam and inquiring about what I would want to do is a good way to start. There's no real need to talk about the future of a game jam. Like, it's not necessary to talk about like, oh, we could sell the game afterward or make it a bigger project. You have no idea what's going to happen during the game jam if the game is going to actually be fun, because it's a short project. So you don't need to talk about the future, but you should keep it in mind for after. Like, don't make any. Are you okay? Do you want a break? You don't need to. Completely broke my flow, dude. Yeah, so you don't need to talk about the future, but you need to keep it in mind. And not talking about the future of any game jam doesn't mean that nothing is should be agreed on, or that it's like do whatever you want. Even when the game jam is finished, you should discuss if you want to do something else, and don't leave with a project and make something on your own without contacting the person you're working with. And above all, of course, keep it fun, because that's, I think, what game jams are for, right? And finally, about amateur and unpaid work. That can be a thing, but you have very, very little chance of finding an artist who won't want to work with you on a free project, because I need to pay my rent, I need to eat, So it's possible to find artists to work with you for free, but you should always first have something to offer. So either it's something that really is not going to get any money and it's going to be hard to convince someone to work with you, and you should think about having good arguments, or you can think about having revenue share after the fact. In that case, I would highly recommend having serious contracts and legal stuff that's worked out fine. Um, and also on free projects, even with that, you need to make sure I'm going to stay interested in the game or project until the very end. So great, you have found an artist is going to work with you on a project. What happens now? So first things first, for every work I need to do, you need to provide specifications. So you need to provide like hitbox, you need to provide frame count, sizes, palettes of color if you have any. Because that's not something I'm going to guess by myself, and it can have a lot of impact on gameplay. For example, if you tell me, oh, I need my hero to attack with his sword, I need to know if it's an horizontal slash, if it's a vertical slash. Does it need a long startup because it does a lot of damage? Does it need to be extremely fast because it's a high action game? That's all stuff that I need to know before I can start working. And if you have all these details beforehand, we are going to save a lot of time. You also need to give us deadline. I work on a few projects where I don't have a deadline. Any time I ask for one, they're like, no, it's fine, do it whenever you can. And the thing is, that kind of project, for me, it kind of sucks, because I have other projects with actual deadline I need to meet, and I'm going to prioritize them. And I keep pushing back the non-deadline stuff. And it doesn't actually matter if the deadline is very important or not. It doesn't need to be because you have something to present at the end of a month, or because you have an event you need to show the game at. Just a deadline so that the project can keep going. And keep in mind that any deadline can be pushed. That's something that happens pretty much all the time in games, especially in games, because we don't necessarily have a lot of experience in project management. And it's fine. The important thing is to have a deadline, to know that we should be working on something and actually produce content. You need, so that's a very artist thing to ask, but you need to give us access to build. Again, as I was saying earlier, I'm not going to steal your game. That's not happening. And I'm going to save a lot of time if you give me access to build. I don't think in the 4 years I've been a freelance, I've had access to any build of any game I've worked on. And that's like at least 15 games. And the thing is, I'm not going to touch the game, mess with the code, or even commit on your SVN. I'm just like trying to get access to file and test stuff in game so that I can save time. In my case, I'm French, so most of the people I work with are from the US, which means like we have different time zones, and it's so much better when I don't have to wait for you to wake up at 11 p.m. my time so I can ask you one question and keep working. So yeah, just give us access to build. We are not going to mess with them. And finally, I would like you to give constructive feedback. So that's kind of a big point. A constructive feedback is not just saying, oh, I like this, or nah, I don't like it. A constructive feedback is telling me, oh, I like the color very much in this piece, or the animation spin in this one is like just not right. We need a longer startup. The active frames need to be much shorter and much clearer to read. And the point of giving constructive feedback is not just to make one piece of one asset I've produced better. It's also going to help me understand the game better and be much faster to produce content afterwards. Because I'm going to know the next time that, oh yeah, for this attack too, the active frames, we need a lot less active frames and they need to be very readable. Like, it's teaching me how to work better on the game. So game dev, it's a relationship, like a complete social thing. You need to make and keep us interested in game. You technically have nothing that prevents an artist from leaving your project, like especially in freelance. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that it happens often, but nothing technically prevents me from saying, dude, I'm not really feeling it. I'm going to jump out and take another project. That would suck for you. So you need to make sure we're interested in the project. Even if we're a contractor, I would highly suggest making sure we participate and feel like we're part of a team. So anyway, keep us updated about the progress. I have some games I worked on where I have no idea what's going on. I'm producing art, but I have no idea if the game even started being coded. And I've worked on a game for a few years, and the development part didn't start. And we have like half the assets to make the game, which is not necessarily bad, but I just need to know what's going on just so I can have expectation and feel like, okay, everything is normal. That makes me feel like I'm not just a contractor, like I'm just not just producing things, and that makes me more invested in the game. You should also encourage teamwork. In the example of Rivals of FIFA, I made my first 2 characters as a pure contractor. Like I was just directly in contact with the creator of the game, just making whatever he asked of me, and that was the only interaction we have. The production value of the game jumped through the roof as soon as I felt like I was part of a team, because we were finally introduced to each other. There are like 6 or 7 people who work on Rivals, and we share whatever we do, and I'm getting feedback from everyone, which makes my assets much better. And it also makes me more invested because I actually care about what I'm doing, because I have multiple person that I need to, how do you say that? I want them to be proud of my work, right? Similarly, feeling like I'm part of a team made me interact way more with the community, and we have a great community that is very thankful that we respond to them. You also should encourage your entire team, not just the artist, to offer ideas for a game. That also goes towards making us feel part of a team. It's like, okay, what if the horizontal slash for your hero was vertical, because it's going to be more single target and not an AoE, and that's going to have repercussion in gameplay. But if you listen to what I have to say and implement some of my ideas, it's going to make me feel like I'm part of a game again. You should also consider hiring multiple artists. I'm saying this specifically for indie game, of course. That can mean from multiple artists making the same, being in the same skill set, or artists that are doing completely different stuff. I'm going to take the example of concept artists, which is something which is weirdly overlooked in indie games. Despite having a lot of advantage, it improved production value. Again, to take the example of Rival Theater, we hired an actual character designer for the DLC character we made. And now we have issues with the community because we have a discrepancy between the old character and the new character, because the new character apparently looked too good compared to the old one. And that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's mostly because we actually have a character designer whose job is to make them look good. It also diminish a lot the workload. A friend of mine had an example where he would take like 8 hours to make an asset, and because he was on his own. And when the game he was working on hired a concept artist, the concept artist would take an hour to do this part of the work, and my friend would take 2 hours. So yes, you are paying two different artists, but you're also paying for 3 hours of work instead of 8. So of course that's an example, but you can save time by having multiple artists doing different parts of the process and pipeline. It also prevents stress and burnout because, for example, I'm mainly an animator right now. If I have to come up with character design, it's not exactly my specialty. I can do it, but it's taking a lot more from me. And that goes toward creating stress and burnout, because that's not something I'm used to do, and I'm not sure about the quality of the work I'm doing. So working with a concept artist, for example, or a character designer, takes a lot off my shoulders. And also a concept artist is extra promo art, which is too widely overlooked despite for indie games needing a lot of promotional stuff. That sentence didn't make work either. Wow, this one. Okay. You can also hire, so I was saying you can also hire complementary artists within the same skill set. I've worked on Rivals of FIFA on a few backgrounds with my friend Sandy, who is also a pixel artist. He could have done the work by himself. But the thing is, the thing he liked the most in backgrounds is the early parts, like doing a speed paint, figuring out the color and the composition. And what I like in that kind of work is doing the touch-up and finishing. So what we did is he would make the first half of the art, for example, which would look like this, so like a sketch of the area. And I would finish his work and clean it up. The thing is, we like working together a lot, and we had a lot of feedback and to give to each other, and we both believe that our work was much better because we were working together. So if you're working with multiple artists, you should also consider making sure the people you hire know each other or work well together and are like friendly, I guess. As I was saying earlier, you should listen to what we have to say. There are still a lot of people who hire artists who think they know better, and that sucks. So if you're going to ask me to draw a black sword with a black outline on a black background for a black environment, I think I have something to say about readability. You should listen to that. That all comes from an issue with sensitivities, I guess. So what you should try is to try to learn the basics of our medias. When I was in game design school, I was told that game designers should try to be a jack of all trades, because by understanding every type of role that's on a game, you're going to have a better understanding of the people you work with and the struggles they have. I understand that it's not easy for everyone to learn every media, but you don't actually need to be able to do art or music or code. What's important is just trying it out to realize that I guess it's not as easy as you could think it is. Again, I'm not trying to rant about to everyone. Don't feel insulted, I guess. Yeah, just trying to understand that not every job is as easy as it can seem help a lot. And one big example of things you could do to help that is to try to do a game jam together, but have swapped roles. So you are a coder and you're working with an artist. Try to make the art and have the artist make the code. You're going to have a bad time. It's not going to be a great game, but a game jam is like 2 days of investment. You're going to learn something new anyway. You're going to experience the other people's struggle, as I was saying. So it's not necessarily about understanding every single detail of what they could have issue with. It's just understanding the idea that they can have issue with something. And it's doing game jam with your team is also a great way to build team cohesion, and it's like kind of teamwork. Management is something that's widely overlooked in game development. And finally, you should try to build trust and loyalty with the people you work with. I've had a big issue with one small gig I had in the past, where I had to work way more than I was supposed to, and the end project ended up being kind of shitty, and the money that looked like a ton at the time ended up, considering how much time I had sunk in it, was nothing. And the thing is, one other project I was working in saw that I was struggling and that I was having problem with that thing, and said, look, the game we are doing together is doing very well at the moment. I'm going to raise you. And they bumped my hourly rate, which is not something I was expecting. I'm never going to let that project down from now on, because that's not necessarily, I'm not saying you should necessarily raise everyone, but the thing is, by doing that, they made me want to be loyal to them, right? Similarly, you should trust me to do my job well, and I would trust you to do yours. And this is all going towards having a good teamwork and good team experience and atmosphere. And ultimately, a good game that, again, I'm interested in, and that I want to put my guts in and make something good out of it. Business part. So this one is obvious, but pay in time. I'm not going to drop the project if you pay in time. And similarly, it helps building trust when I know that if I'm sending you an invoice, you're going to pay it before my bill arrives. If you're not comfortable working with a new artist you've hired, which is completely normal and understandable, you can offer to do a paid art test, which is like take some time to make a sprite or two, or an asset, or something for the game, just to check that the relationship between you and I is going to work out. Because when you invest yourself in a game, it's going to take like years of work, and you should probably not work with someone you're not feeling well with. God, French, right? So yeah, again, it's a relationship. You have to maintain it and make sure it works. If you don't do a paid art test, but you're still feeling uncomfortable, you can eventually do weekly or bi-weekly payments instead of monthly stuff. For example, keep in mind too that good work takes time. That's going along with a paid art test. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, you broke me. Um, yeah, the first few days, weeks, or months I'm going to work on a project are not going to be my 100% because I'm not used to your project yet. You should eventually consider having a small pre-production time or research time. I still have clients that expect me from day one to be able to produce normal content at like full steam. Make sure you understand that artists need some time to get used to a project and the style, the kind of requirements you might have. Uh, uh, I'm going to briefly talk about payment methods. Something that's overlooked is fixed salary. You can offer a freelance artist to a certain sum of money for a month, and I'm going to give you what would be close to my hourly rate. But the thing is, I'm going to go over what my hourly rate is because I know that that money is fixed, and I'm not going to stress out about the time I have to put in it, which results in me spending more time working for you in the end. You can have hourly rate and have it capped, which means like you can tell the artist, okay, I'm going to pay you hourly, but could you not spend more than like 20 or 30 hours a month working on this? And finally, rev share, which is like the bane of my existence because I want it, but you should not pay only in revenue share because I still have rent to pay. If you want, I'm going to go fast because I think we are going a bit over time. But the best thing you can do is probably fixed salary with revenue share. Um, uh, I think this is final slide. So you should stick to what you agreed to. That means don't do over games with my asset, with my agreement. Don't change the game without telling me, especially if you're working with a publisher. I know someone with that had that happen. Like the person in charge of the game had an agreement with the publisher and changed the game entirely without their consent, and that looks bad for everyone. Don't make important decisions alone. I've had a game I was working on that was entirely cancelled without my consent, and I was not a contractor, I was a business partner. That was like 50-50, we were making a game, the two of us, and I didn't have a word to say in that, and the game was cancelled. And if you have to change the scope, whether it's like making the game bigger or smaller, you should consider revising your agreement. That means both what you agreed to do with the artist as far as pipeline, as investment and stuff like that goes, but also what you're paying me. Maybe I might have stuff to do if you change stuff to say if you change the scope of the game. And finally, don't make me do your paperwork. I've had some people ask me to do parts of their tax. I don't. No, I mean, I don't mind filling a form because it's required for you to have it, but I should not be spending 4 hours, and that happened, trying to figure out how to fill your form. Sorry. And that's it.